Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to our July Unsung Hero interview series. Today's guest is Greg Rapport, and the first thing I could think of when the nomination came through for him is how apt of a last name is it for somebody who is literally building a rapport with the youth in our community. You will hear more about him and his organization shortly, but I had to share a tiny excerpt from the nomination that came through. The nomination said that Greg has the enthusiasm for helping others, and he's dedicated and devoted to helping the underserved youth in the community, but he has a passion for learning about technology and new opportunities to increase his organization's impact in our community. So as a business owner myself, who is looking at technology with a for-profit eye and looking at seeing ways to increase technology to run my business, I was actually very intrigued to find out how Greg is using technology to help in the nonprofit world. So Greg, welcome, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to interview you.
Thank you, Rekha. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Great. So Greg, what I would like to do is, just as we do with all of our interviews, to just set the stage a little bit and tell you how we're going to conduct this interview. We are going to start by asking you some questions about your journey here, a little bit about your childhood and how you got here. Then we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions. So here, don't worry, it's not going to be too hard, but I want you to give me the first answer that pops into your mind. And at the end, we're going to ask you 3 questions about your legacy. Would that be okay with you?
3 questions. Okay, yeah. I can't wait to find out what those are.
Great, great. So let's begin. So I'm going to start by asking you to tell us about your organization and how it got started and how it came to be.
Well, Age Out Angels is an organization that works with children when they age out of the foster care system. And the way that came to be was purely like by happenstance. I was going to retire. I, I was ready to retire. I went to the library and I started reading books because that's what people do when they retire, you know. And I read books, and on the shelf was a book called On Their Own by Martha Shirk. And it detailed, I don't know, 11, 12 chapters of just story after story of what happens to children when they age out of foster care. You know, and right at that moment, I don't know, like if you or anyone who listens to this ever experienced what feels like a calling, you know, it's because there's a lot of things that I like to do in the world that, you know, and I'm sure you do too, right? There's things you like to do, things you're good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that. This was different. This was a calling. And the important thing to remember there is then I had to sort of learn how to do it. You can't just say I'm a do-gooder now, so I'm going to have a social service organization and oh boy, everyone will love me, you know, and come flocking because I'm solving this problem that only I seem to be able to identify, right? I mean, it isn't anything like that. You really have to learn how to have a social service organization properly and how to make sure that when you're working, especially with children, that you don't actually do more harm than good. So training is really sort of key. I think I went a little off topic there, but this is 2015
Okay.
when I read the book in May
Okay.
of 2015. And so, you know, then I set about the task of doing all the things, learning the things I had to learn, taking the extension courses from Robert Wood Johnson and Rutgers in social work and all that, you know. I
So
had a
prior to
bachelor's
this,
degree.
did you have any training in social work?
No, I mean I had a bachelor's degree in college 40 years ago and I took some sociology. You know,
Right. And that was it.
that was pretty much the extent of it, yeah.
Okay. Now you're married. Your wife is Robin, and
Yeah.
I see that she is also involved in this organization.
My wife
Uh,
is a princess. She puts up with all the stuff that I do. She's
Take me
amazing.
back to that time. You go to her now and you say, Robin, this is my calling.
She said, you're my, you know, so it's pretty much everyone. It was this, like getting this just sort of started, um, was really not something that I was expecting a lot of support on. And because, I mean, for very obvious reasons, which is that I had absolutely no experience.
Right.
in doing this kind of thing. So if someone comes to you with no experience and says, now I'm going to be a hip hop star, right?
And
Or
tell
now
me
I'm going to be,
how did you pitch it? What were your words? What did you use? What words were you using when you were telling people that this is what you wanted to do?
I couldn't imagine that if anyone learned about this, what happens to children in foster care, that they wouldn't automatically be immediately as impassioned as I was. And
So
this is hidden. This is like secret stuff, what happens to foster kids. They don't talk about it. It's humiliating for them. What seems to be a calculable solution to some of their problems is to give them a mentor. There's some evidence base that says, if there's one mentor, I did all the research and everything. If there's evidence base that says that if there's a mentor, the life can change, the person's life can change. It,
but the government themselves don't give them a mentor, or
no,
do they?
no, they don't. No, and well, the government gives them some pretty, I guess the best supports they can, right up until the age of 21.
Okay.
And then after that, things get really, really dicey. The joke that I make is I can have everyone at your cocktail party crying if all you say to me is, so what do you do? I promise you 5 minutes later, everyone will be crying and
Wow.
writing checks.
Tell me how you got here.
Yeah, I had a pretty normal middle class upbringing. I
In
lived
New
in,
Jersey?
yeah, a white suburban neighborhood in Ventnor, which is near Atlantic City, right on the shore. I grew up on the beach block, you know. I
You
was,
were a surfer boy or no?
I actually wasn't a surfer boy, but I was just in that milieu, all the
Right.
time. I was the guitar player on the board
Wow.
back then. So that
And
was
and
fun.
then you go off to college and then you do what? What do you do after college?
After college, well, I was a musician. I came back from college and I was a music teacher at a local private school.
And then you go on, you do, and it sounds like you've been doing a lot of you've been involved with teaching kids, so you kind of see the impact that it has, anything that, good or bad, you see the impact on kids and how that may translate out in their future years. So this is probably something that was building to get you here, right? Like
Wow.
if you think about your involvement in with children.
That's pretty cool. We just met and you made that connection. Yeah. I got to teach a program back then when I came out of school. I was teaching in a private school and I was a music teacher. That's what I was. But they said, this is sort of a half day thing. Can you teach it? It was an experimental program, fourth grade, half day. Okay. And it was an individualized instruction program. And it was just amazing. And they trained me. I learned how to do it. And we taught this program and it was absolutely remarkable. And we did it for 6 years. And then I left to go on and pursue other things. And I thought to myself, I will never see this program again because it'll never get funded. It just would require too much funding. This will never happen again. And now I got things into a position where I have just enough funding, where I have a very, very similar kind of program to that. And that was 1976 to 1981. And here I've come forward, 40-ish years.
Tying the circle.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you made that tie.
Any particular person that has been very, very influential in your life?
In my life, oh goodness, I've been alive a long time. Specific regard to Age Out Angels. I was in about my second year when a woman named Nancy Scott called me up, and she had been a social worker for like 40 years, an administrator and a trainee and stuff like that. And I will tell you that Nancy Scott, spent a lot of time and taught me more about the social work aspect of this and the way the children are really, really feeling,
Mm,
not how you think they should be feeling, but how how they really are feeling and what the roots of those feelings were. And I don't know if you're familiar with this term, trauma informed. Have you ever
No.
heard that before? Okay. How well you understand the full physiological effect that complex childhood trauma has on a young developing mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we do a lot of training in this in the social services world so that you understand that um, uh, a way that a child may react that may appear to you to be, I don't know, maladaptive or something actually makes perfect sense if you follow a particular,
Oh, that's
pattern of logic, and it's all very clinically based.
so can you give me an example of that, Greg? Just any like example that comes to your mind as to how the action or the behavior was actually something, if you were trained properly, you would learn to recognize it.
Oh, sure, sure. Because in fact, I'll tell you something that's really, really easy for everyone to understand, which is the difference between survival mode and achievement mode. Okay? Most of us are growing up in these white middle class families, right? We're in achievement mode the whole time. As people in the household may have graduated college, other people, right? Other generations. And if they haven't, then the goal is for you to graduate college, right? You get into that, this is the American dream, into that middle class stream, and that's how it plays out for you. But I work with children who are in households where no one has ever graduated high school,
Hmm.
let alone college. They don't have that push. What we would consider to be an obvious choice in a given situation would be the opposite choice that they would choose because they are not groomed, in that particular way. Now, you carry that all the way through to true survival mode. True survival mode, meaning you don't always know where your next meal is coming from. You don't always know where you're going to sleep that night. Your safety is frequently in question.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And you're taught to deal with people in a manner that will get you something. Like when I meet you, I'm not trying to, do an interview and help you. I'm trying to size you up and figure out what I can get from you.
Huh.
There's no trust at all. None. You trust no one. I will tell you the story that I think you want to hear to get whatever I think I can get from you. I may tell you a sob story if I think I can get some money from you or something. I may, if I'm like a little bit scared of you, I may tell you a story about how I got people. I got people got my back, just in case I'm thinking you may be a little bit threatening. Okay? So all these things that I just said to you now, right? These are elements that were probably never a part of either one of our lives growing up.
Wow.
Survival mode is, where foster children are a lot of the time, especially when they age out, because 50% are homeless after 6 months. Okay. So yeah, there's a very different way that complex childhood trauma affects, the way a person will react when they grow up, the way they interact with the world and society and other people. So what our task, if you think about this now, our task is to completely flip them on their ears and have them suddenly aspire, to
Mhm.
our definition of a middle class life, you know. And our reason for doing that is because we know if they'll do it, they'll have enough money. They'll be able to live. They'll have a house. They can fall in love. They can get married. It's got to be better than where they are now, you know?
So, can you tell us exactly what Age Out in Angels does? When do you go? When are you going and getting a hold of these people? Are you working with who are you working with to be able to say, okay, as soon as this person turns 18, are you helping from that point?
Well, even 14, we'll start as young as 14. We, as you said earlier, the younger we can start them, right? The younger we can start them, the better chance we have. By 18, 19, 20 years old, they're in full-on survival mode.
Mm. And do they ever jeopardize, I mean, just knowing the children you've helped, and you must have helped since 2015. Approximately how many people have you helped? How many children have you helped
We've had about 100 children go through the
go
system,
through the
and
system?
yeah, what we do mostly now has to do with education,
Okay,
because what I described about putting them in a position to earn a living,
right.
right? The key to that is education.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found is that youth in foster care may have a high school diploma,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have any skills, especially in mathematics.
Mm.
So I'll meet someone, and very frequently this will happen. I'll give them a diagnostic, and they'll score in like maybe seventh or eighth grade in reading and language, but they'll score in fourth grade or fifth grade in mathematics.
And these are 18-year-olds or younger, 14?
18, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, they can be younger, but 18, 19, 20, 21,
okay.
yeah. At high school will graduate them without, and they won't have the skills. That's how it is. And so everybody knows this. So if they try to go to college, or if they try to get in the military, or what we recommend, which is vocational career training,
Mm-hmm.
you can make a fortune, doing all the trades. They're dying for people
Mm-hmm.
right now. And you pick a trade, and you can write your own ticket.
Mm.
But you have to be able to take that diagnostic test and score in the 10th grade level. Okay. So if
That's the
you have,
minimum that you're looking
that's right.
for?
Doesn't even matter if you have a high school diploma. If you take that test and you don't score in ninth or 10th grade,
Right.
the other day I heard someone say ninth. Maybe they lowered that standard.
Lowered the grade.
But it used to be 10th because you had to know geometry.
Mm.
That was in 10th grade is geometry in New Jersey. And so if, you study geometry, then you could understand how to build things and how angles are, right?
Right.
Measurement and all that works. That was the plan for the mentors to be lifelong
Mm.
friends.
Almost like foster parents
Yeah,
continuing on.
yeah. So they'd always be there. You can't come and live with them.
Okay.
You got to learn how to live on your own.
But you
Right?
always know somebody has your back in
That's
case
right.
you
Yeah.
need some sort of help or
That's right. When
and,
you fall down, so that person, there's always somebody there who says it's okay, you'll get back up.
right.
We'll get them again, because God, foster kids don't get loved. You know what? Foster kids get tolerated at best. And when they misbehave like a normal teenager would, they frequently end up in police custody. So they don't get any love. And having one person in their life who just says, I believe in you. Okay, take your time, relax, we'll get through this. This is where that old individual instruction method comes in, that I learned in the mid 70s. We give each child gets private tutors that they work with virtually.
Okay.
Okay. So and they can do that to some degree at their own pace, but with flexible scheduling, which is the
Okay.
important thing. So, people, when they're 21, they could have two kids, or more, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, they have other lives. They may have part-time jobs, they have other responsibilities. So we'll schedule around that when they move, and foster kids move frequently. Um, it doesn't matter, because we're just working with you virtually. After 21, then you're in the hands of social services,
Oh
the
my goodness.
county board of social services. Yeah, and that's actually a terrible moment, because if you don't have your whole life organized
Oh my
by that
goodness.
moment when you turn 21, then you go straight to social services, and they tell you, nice to meet you, but it might take a few weeks to, go over your information. We'll get back to you. What's your address? They don't have one.
They don't have one.
They don't have one. So I mean, it's really easy to sort of end up in a shelter or on the street. There's this sort of homelessness, but there are pods of kids,
Mm.
who sort of look after each other. Um,
What's your end goal? What do you want to do with this organization? How do you want to leave this?
how do I want to leave the organization?
As in,
I want
you
to,
know,
well, yeah, that's something I really have to think about because I'm not getting younger.
because, as a business owner, I'm always thinking, what's my exit strategy, right? How do I build this thing that I'm building? But eventually I want somebody to take it over and
Yeah.
do what, but if I can go a few steps back, what was your idea for this organization in terms of how you said you wanted to help these people who were aging out of one system? You wanted to kind of get them to get a good footing, and you wanted to help them in transition. Did you have an idea as to how long you would help them? Would you go on to
Well,
25?
I had always told prospective mentors that they were making a lifelong commitment.
Hmm.
That was always the point, was it would be lifelong. What's changed over the years is that when we started, it was just sort of a pure mentorship. One person would work with one person and they would be friends for life, and that would be a beautiful thing, right? That worked in several places, but in many places it kind of didn't. And what's different about what we do now is the education component.
Hmm.
Because what we're doing is when people enter our program, they enter through the education component, and we're setting them up for success. And so the mentoring that happens really sort of happens more towards, as they're getting through their education, they're getting prepared for what comes next, which is the training where you make the money. Either go to college, join the military, or get vocational career training. Now, so we have you prepped for this. What happened was this. I had set out to build an all-volunteer organization. That's always what I wanted, was an all-volunteer organization. I wanted the kids to know that whoever's working with them is working with them because they want to be there, you know,
Oh, wow. That's
and
an
they're
interesting.
and they're not going to disappear when the funding runs out,
Ah.
And I didn't take any money. I ran this organization for 7 years before I took a salary, you know. So that the whole plan was it for to be a volunteer organization. And so I had a lot of help at one point, but it was all volunteer, you see. And then the pandemic came,
Oh.
okay? And I thought, this is it. We're done. We're cooked. Like, how are we supposed to mentor people? No one is
Especially
even
it's supposed to be a
allowed.
one-on-one, right?
Yeah. And then even after that, it went on for months and months after that, because the kids didn't want to be vaccinated and the adults didn't want to be with kids who weren't vaccinated, right? So this is not a viable, not a viable business. And then I had completed an RFP with Mercer County Community College
Okay.
to set up an education program that would be funded by the state. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the pandemic, the state came through and said, we're ready to fund an education program. And so with absolutely no help, the whole business exploded, and I had to make education plans,
That's
run the
incredible.
school, run the business, get the mentors, get the volunteers, train. Everybody's got to be trauma informed. And this education program, there's nothing like this in the country.
And that was going to be my question. Did you model this after some other state or any other it was
I,
it.
I
Where did
modeled it after what I did in 1976. That's what I modeled it, you know.
that is
I modeled
incredible.
it after that. And it works. We found that if a child really sticks to the program, every 8 weeks, if they do 4 hours of class time a week per subject, okay? Every 8 weeks, they'll increase a full grade level.
Wow.
So if you start with fourth grade, it doesn't have to take you 6 years to get to 10th grade. You understand? Give us a year, and do the work. Schools will graduate you if you haven't done the work. You see, when you come from our school, you're going to be able to pass those tests, right? So you have to do the work. This is not a diploma mill, right? Think of the spread. Think of the difference between someone who is on subsidy for their whole life, right? Section 8 housing, food stamp subsidy for their entire life, compared to someone who, you know, makes somewhere between like say 60 and $85,000 a year and pays taxes on that money and spends that money in the community,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. How much of involvement does your wife have in this organization?
I do it all, but she hears about it all.
She's your therapist.
And also she's brilliant. And that's really helpful. You know, I would be foolish not to tap you know, her particular expertise. Well, I was teaching in that school. We were a scandal.
Why?
We were a scandal. I was teaching in that school. Robin was actually visiting the Atlantic City area from New York,
Uh-huh.
just sort of taking some time off from the big city, and took a part-time job teaching the drama group at the school that I was in, and so
Oh,
one day I heard her voice.
you just heard her voice. You
I
hadn't seen
heard
her
her
face
voice.
then.
I didn't
Okay.
see her first. No, I heard her voice.
How are you using technology
Yes.
to make an
Okay.
impact with Age Out Angels?
All right. So with now you're in a nonprofit situation, and I'm sure I speak for 800,000 nonprofits across the country. We don't have money to do advertising. There's 800,000 nonprofits who can't afford that, you know, who could really use a buck. Um, and so here comes AI to make a video. In the old days, to make a video was $2,500 a day.
Mhm.
How many days do you need to shoot? With AI, you pay what, $25 a month, right? And you can create content
Mhm.
that goes out over social media,
Mhm.
which is the only way, you know, to to really reach an audience,
Yeah.
you know, in this day
Okay.
and age. So, you know, so how do we not do that?
So you're busy learning everything that you can about how to, get out these videos and do other things using technology, using AI.
There's so many component parts to it, and it makes me feel so very old.
Old but young.
Yeah.
And why the name Age Out Angels?
Yeah. I could tell you some silly names that were already taken, but it just seems to speak for, you know, for the combination of what we're doing, you know, our audience, which is aging out. And a good friend of mine who passed away, Bob Danzig, wrote a book called Angel Threads.
Mm,
He was actually a famous foster kid.
mm,
He was also the CEO of the Hearst Newspaper Corporation.
mm.
He was a foster kid. And he wrote a book called Angel Threads about how we all sort of somehow tie together in that way. And I sort of used angels a little bit to honor him.
Oh, amazing. All right. So, Greg, it is now time for our rapid fire round of questioning. So remember, I'm going to ask you a question, and you're just going to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
What's your first meal of the day?
Breakfast, you
Okay.
know,
And what is your favorite mealtime of the day? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
dinner.
Dinner. Why?
It's just substantive.
It's a very practical answer. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, I'm so weird. Sometimes I get on a jag and I'm really early, and other times, no, I'm night.
You're
Yeah,
night.
I'm
Okay.
strange. I'm ADHD.
Okay.
You have to
Okay. So that
understand that. And
makes
I don't think of it as bad. I think of it as a superpower. So I just run with it.
awesome. Do you like fruits or vegetables?
Fruits,
What's your favorite one? Your favorite.
bananas.
You're
You
like
know what
thinking,
threw me? I'm sorry. You know what threw me there? Because we were talking about Indian before the interview, and I cook Indian food, and
okay.
and no one can do with the vegetable what Indian cuisine can do with the vegetable. So when you asked the question, it actually threw me for a second, because vegetables cooked correctly, you know, Indian style, are better than anything, you know, in the world. Forgive me, continue.
No, no, no worries. What is the one thing that's unexpected about you, where people might be surprised to hear?
That I'm absolutely relentless.
Is that surprising?
Yeah, it seems to surprise people. That may not come through on the Zoom, but
Okay.
it seems like in my life I've always been able to operate well from the underdog position.
Okay. Okay. What is the one age that you would want to be forever?
Oh, about 30, 35.
I'm not going to ask you what your age is now,
Yeah.
because I put you down to 40. So, if you can go back into your childhood, what is the one advice you would give to your younger self?
Go to Nashville.
Why?
Yeah, because that's where my songwriting capability would have shown.
Interesting.
Yeah, see, I was the bad part about the advice that I had back then was I was groomed to write symphonies,
Okay.
and I was terrible at it. I was just awful at writing symphonies.
Okay.
And there's and I but I could write a song. And there's a path to songwriting, and I didn't know it. And if someone had just said, just do it, pick up your bags. I went to New York, right? Pack up your bags, go to Nashville, get into songwriting teams. That would have been an interesting life. But also, what a regret, right? I wouldn't have met my wife or had my family.
And
Wouldn't
you
have
would
happened.
not have Age Out Angels,
Yeah, well, that may have still happened, but
because wasn't it the music course that you taught when you went back from New York that
right, that I
changed,
learned how to teach.
that you
Yeah,
learned how to teach? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
That was where I learned how to teach. That's true.
interesting.
Yeah,
Um, if Robin had to describe you in one word, what would it be?
insane.
All right, so that concludes our rapid fire round. I want to leave with the three legacy questions that I usually ask. Um, we kind of talked about it a little bit at the start, but what is the legacy you want to leave in your life?
I want to leave this organization for the community. I want to hire people from within the community. I want the community to ultimately run it, and I want it to be a part of the community. One thing that I believe I've learned in the 8 years now that I've been doing this is that people of color don't necessarily want a whole bunch of white people to lead them. You know, they really would like to have the opportunity and have the reins and go the direction they want to go, in the way that they want to go. And so the best gift that I could possibly give, to this community is maybe I used my white privilege to get this thing going, right? Maybe I had a voice in a community where someone else might not have.
Wow,
Okay. So if that's what I did and I incubated it properly, right, then I should be able to serve it up and allow it to flourish the way the community wants it to.
that's amazing. That's great. And what are you most proud of in terms of your accomplishments?
In terms of Age Out Angels
Just
specifically, or
generally, in terms of everything you've done in your life, what are you the most proud of?
my family. Yeah.
Ah, beautiful. And if there's one thing you want all of us, human beings around you in this world, that you wish we could do better, what would it be?
Adopt an older foster kid. Here's what I want you to do, okay? Everybody who sees this is what I want you to do. I'm not talking about necessarily a kid who's 15, 17, 19 years old, okay? What I'm talking about is someone who had been in foster care, who's already grown up and aged out, maybe 21, 23, 25, somewhere in there. Because it is never too late to have a family. Is that why do we think that when a child is 23, well, gee, they've grown out of it? There's no reason to adopt. Why would they need a family now? They should have a family, right? You could think of 20 reasons not to do it, except don't they deserve a family?
Wow.
So, you can do that. You can adopt an older foster kid and, just like, be nice to them. You won't have to go through the terrible teams. Many advantages. Yeah, so many advantages. And there are stories about, that kids, who are adopted, especially like when they're in the middle of college. A kid ages out of foster care in the middle of college, and suddenly they're like trying to finish the semester, but they know that, when the semester ends, they're kicked out of the dorm and they have no place to go.
Oh my God.
Right?
That's
Adopt a kid for God's sake.
so it's interesting, right? In two levels, this resonated with me. The one is, as you know, we're an estate planning firm,
Mhm.
and we are always setting up people's wills and their trusts, and we're documenting and formalizing their wishes. And it's interesting because there's a question that we have to ask when we're drafting their documents is, you know, are you going to include anybody else? Are there any afterborn children? So we always have like a rule of thumb, if they're over a certain age, these are the 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids that they have. This is it. But I've always wondered, what if they adopt somebody down the
Well,
road?
yeah.
Well, Greg, it was an honor and a pleasure to have this interview. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. And we look forward to you doing more and more great things. Hopefully, we get to have a chance to interview you when you've got 1,000 people who've come through your program.
That'd be great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.